Hello, and welcome to Here by Nature. Today we're going over the book of Jude, its key verse, and the introduction. The key verse is 1:3, if you wanted to go ahead and get to that in your Bible. Hopefully that sounds okay. But while you're doing that, I'm going to go over the introduction to Jude, which is fairly long, so bear with me. The author, date, and recipients. The book was written by Jude, the brother of James and Jesus. Jude was probably written in the mid-60s AD, considering the letter's apparent Jewish perspective. Jude's audience was probably Jewish Christians, or a mixture of Jewish and Gentile readers, where the Gentiles were familiar with Jewish traditions. Since Jude addresses a situation similar to the one addressed in 2 Peter, and exhibits a literary relationship to chapter 2 of that letter, the two letters are commonly dated in fairly close proximity, even though evidence for the date of writing within the book of Jude is sparse. The overall theme for the book of Jude is the church must defend the one true faith. Believers must be faithful to the end by resisting false teachers and following the truth. The purpose, occasion, and background. Jude warns against following false teachers who have infiltrated the church and are distorting the one true faith. Jude calls the church to defend the truth aggressively against false teaching. While the false teachers of Jude were profoundly libertine, morally unrestrained, it would be historically inaccurate to argue that they were Gnostics. This heretical sect, or group of sects, was influential primarily from the 2nd century AD onward. Jude accomplishes his purpose by drawing analogies with Old Testament events, using the same principles of interpretation found in 2 Peter and elsewhere in the New Testament. He also draws on Jewish apocalyptic traditions from non-biblical literature in building his case. Thus, as literature, Jude has a distinctively Jewish flavor. The format of a New Testament epistle, which is a letter, with its loose divisions of salutation, body, and closing, but the central unit of the letter, chapters 5 to 16, fit the style of a judgment oracle. It has an object of attack, an attack coming from several directions, a harsh tone, and an implied standard on which the attack is being conducted. The description of those who left the faith provides a picture of their character and actions. The use of images and allusions lends to a poetic quality of the letter. The writer displays horror over the apostasy and the false teachers who have caused it. The only New Testament passage that goes beyond Jude in these traits is Jesus' denunciation of the religious leaders in Matthew 23. But this letter begins with the unusual soothing notes of New Testament epistles. And in the last 2 verses, it becomes one of the most moving benedictions of the New Testament. There are 6 key themes to the book of Jude. Christians need to defend the doctrines of the faith. False teachers may be identified by their immoral character. God will judge false teachers. Saints must endure to be saved. As God grants mercy to those who are called, they must show mercy to others. God grants the grace to ensure that his people will persevere. And the key verse of Jude, again, is 1:3, which reads, Beloved, Although I was very eager to write to you about our common salvation, I found it necessary to write appealing to you to contend for the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints. The first key takeaway is the faith is a fixed and sacred deposit. Jude emphasizes that the faith was once for all delivered to the saints, meaning the core truths of the gospel are complete, unchanging, and entrusted to believers. Christian doctrine is not fluid or culturally adaptable at its core. It is divinely given truth that must be preserved, not reinvented. The journal prompts for the first key takeaway are: do I treat biblical truth as something to steward or something to reshape? Where am I tempted to compromise foundational truths for cultural acceptance? How well do I actually know the core truths of the faith I am called to defend? The second key takeaway is believers are called to actively contend for the faith. Jude's appeal is urgent. Contend for the faith. This implies effort, struggle, and intentional defense against false teaching. Faithfulness to Christ requires more than passive belief. It demands active engagement, discernment, and sometimes confrontation. The journal prompts for the second key takeaway are: in what ways am I actively defending or upholding my faith? Do I avoid difficult spiritual conversations to keep peace? How can I grow in both courage and gentleness when standing for the truth? The third key takeaway is spiritual complacency is dangerous. Jude shifts from wanting to write about our common salvation to urgently addressing a threat, showing that false teaching and moral compromise require immediate attention. The church must remain spiritually alert. Complacency opens the door to deception and distortion of the gospel. The journal prompts for the third key takeaway are: have I grown spiritually complacent in areas where I should be alert? What influences in my life might be subtly distorting truth? How can I cultivate greater spiritual awareness and discernment daily? So, for the personal reflection part today, I'm going to do the second key takeaway's second question, which reads: do I avoid difficult spiritual conversations to keep peace? Now, I haven't ever had to have a deep spiritual conversation yet, so yes. But also, I have to have very quick conversations with customers. So, slipping in a "here's the gospel, by the way" can be a little difficult at points. But I am trying to, I don't know if it counts as evangelize, but I'm trying to invite people to church more. Like I mentioned in the second Peter video, I've been asking a lot of people, my coworkers, and even a couple customers as well. But what initially came to mind with this question was whenever customers leave, I tell them to have a blessed day, kind of like I do with the videos. And in the beginning, there were a couple customers who didn't necessarily take it the right way. I feel like some of them thought that I was being sarcastic, because one of them cussed at my person. Like, they were walking away, but they cussed towards me, if that makes sense. And then another one, the first one that didn't take it the right way, she did kind of turn around and she said to me, "This isn't church." And I know I've told that story before, but in my mind, that was kind of the point. Didn't say anything back to her because I know that that's what she wanted. So I just left her with have a blessed day. And then a kind of easy question, the third key takeaways, third question, which is, how can I cultivate greater spiritual awareness and discernment daily? Which is reading my Bible. So I have a small group that I lead, and Thursdays we always go over basically what we're going over right now on my YouTube channel, which is trying to read the whole Bible, which doesn't necessarily give a lot of time to like deep dive into certain verses and what they mean, but it does give like a good overarching idea of the Bible because you read it. So, my small group reading, I'm reading an entire book of the Bible every single week. And kind of like the past couple weeks of videos, sometimes 2 or more. Next week, I think, is the Epistles of John, which is technically 3, but I know they're really short, so 3. But yeah, I'm doing my small group. I'm also preparing for Revelation in my small group where I'm going to be reading ahead. I'm in week 3 right now of an 8-week book that I got to help me break it down a little bit because it's definitely very daunting. So I'm reading for my small group. I'm reading for preparation for my small group, which is like a self-study, and just diving into the Word. So hopefully you heard whatever it is you needed to hear today. And until next week, friends, I'll see you then, and have a blessed one.